There is a trap that you can fall into when it comes to practicing, because we spend a lot of time learning songs and practicing to hit the right notes when we solo. But if you only take your playing to that level, then that can become a huge problem along the way. That's not where the music is. There is a lot of other things that you want to develop if you want to sound great when you're improvising. But it's actually pretty easy to start working on these things. You just need to be aware of them and you need to focus on them when you're practicing. My name is Larsen. Learn jazz, make music. This is about making music, because even though you're working on a song, you learn the melody, the changes, the scales, pentatonics, arpeggios, all that good stuff. Then you also need to be aware of how well you need to know this if you want to sound good. That's what I want to discuss in this video, and I'm going to do that using some anecdotes and stories from interviews from famous musicians that we all admire, because I think it's not only the music that we love, sometimes it's also really inspiring to hear about how they practice and how they work to learn things. This is Pat Metheny demonstrating how he practices a blues in C with the metronome on 2 and 4. The thing that stands out to me with this is that he's not trying to learn how to play over a blues in C. In fact, he's working on a song that he's probably performed 1,000 times already. So what is it that he's trying to improve in his playing? What is it that he's practicing and trying to get better at? And actually the answer to that is in another masterclass where he's talking about how he thinks about improvisation and also how he's really thinking when he's improvising.
For me, while I'm playing, I'm not thinking about tonalities or chords or this or that, but it's an element in what I'm doing. Just like while I'm speaking to you now, in the front of my mind, I'm not thinking about verbs and adjectives and nouns. I'm just talking because I can do it. Yeah. And it's the same with improvisation.
The connection, as I see it, is that learning the changes, having something that you can play on each of the chords, is similar to learning how to spell, knowing the words, the grammar. But I'm sure you also agree that knowing how to spell and form a sentence is not going to make you the next Shakespeare.
Why am I in this video? I don't even like jazz. To be, but not to bop.
You probably need to work on telling a story and make what you say interesting to listen to. And if you transfer this to music, that means that you want to be able to play phrases that connect and a solo that sounds like a complete piece of music. And this is something that you can probably practice better on a song where you don't really need to think about what the chords are and what notes to hit, but really can worry about what you're playing and how the whole thing sounds, what the overall picture is. The idea of learning something so well that you can make music on a higher level, that you don't have to worry about the technical details or technical difficulties, is actually not that new in jazz. A few weeks ago I watched an interview with Wayne Shorter where he's talking about how Charlie Parker was teaching a student.
Giving a music lesson to a young guy. Charlie Parker talking, giving a music lesson. And the young boy, about 16, said, you mean I have to learn all these keys? I have to study and learn all these keys? And Charlie Parker said, he spoke like a dignitary.
Yeah, right.
Yes, you have to learn these keys. You have to learn all these keys, and when you learn them, you have to forget them, throw them away, forget them.
If you want to check out the interviews that I'm using in this video, then there are links to those in the description. And I think these are really worthwhile checking out because, of course, it's just interesting to hear how these people talk about music, what they think, and also how they learned. So there's really, besides it just being really entertaining, there's really a lot you can take away from it. It can sound scary that we have to learn songs and scales and all sorts of things so well that we don't have to think about it when we're doing it. But maybe that's something we do all the time. Maybe that's actually something that we're doing with a lot of other things, and also something that we can naturally take into how we play music. The question is now, how do you get that free on a song? Because very often I think we put the bar pretty low. It's like, I know the melody, I know the changes, and I can play through the song, then I know the song. And of course, there is some truth to that, but that's not the level where you can improvise over a song and then not worry about all the technical stuff. Like Parker says, forgetting all the scales and all those things and just make music. So there is another level to take this. And if we look at how Pat Metheny is practicing a blues in C, a form that he definitely knows, that he knows really well, that he doesn't have to think about this, then that is really a good demonstration of how you work towards this level, because you keep returning to the songs that you know well, and then gradually you're really getting them into your system and you're working on becoming completely free on top of them. But of course you can also approach this in a different way where you're really focusing on one song like Bud Powell does.
I could tell you a story that Frankie Hewitt and them went by Bud Powell's house one morning, knocked on the door opened. Bud Powell was playing Embraceable You. They tried to get him to go out and just go and get high and stuff. He said, no, he playing Embraceable You. So they went and got high all day and came back that night stumbling and everything, knocked on his door. Bud Powell was still in there playing Embraceable You.
I'm pretty sure that the way Barry Harris is talking about the practice session of Bud Powell is something that is difficult for us to really implement, because most of us don't have that much time. But I think it is important to realize that people spend so much time getting into that music, being aware that it actually takes some effort to really know a song. And I think the story describes that really well. If you want to improve your playing on this higher level of thinking, where you're not thinking about exactly what note you're playing or what scale that was, then you also need to start listening to the phrases and really thinking in these building blocks, because that's what makes up your solo. So a good way to start to get into this would be to start listening to your own solos, or record yourself, and then use different labels for the type of phrases. That could be something like this. Scale melodies. For more intervals. Larger skips. But you can also think in terms of the material that's being used, so more like basic pop material. Blues. Outside. Of course, rhythm is important as well, so maybe more like full rhythms. Sparse. In the groove. Or against it. Of course, there are many more ways you can describe phrases, many more things that you can notice when you listen to your own playing. These are just a few suggestions to get you started, but I think this way of thinking is also going to help you understand if you're always doing the same, or if something is missing in your playing, and you can gradually start to introduce that into the phrases that you play. This video is not really teaching you how to play better, because usually when I make videos, then they're giving you something that you can use, and then you sound a lot better on a D-7 chord. But here, this is much more about how you think about your practice, how you think about what it means to know a song, and also about your own progress and what you should be aiming for. But in the long run, I think that's a lot more important. Besides listening to your phrases and trying to figure out how they sound and have an idea about how your solo sounds, then you also need to work on connecting the different phrases to play a complete piece of music and not just things next to each other. And this is something that has to be a fairly high level decision. You can't really think too much about arpeggios or voice leading things while you're trying to solo and make music. It's similar to driving a car. If you drive a car and you want to slow down, then you just think about that you want to slow down. You don't think about that you have to lift your foot, put it on the brake and press gently. And the language comparison is still really useful for understanding how phrases need to connect. If the first phrase you play in a solo is something like James Bond has just arrived, then the next phrase that you play in your solo should not be the equivalent of Megadeth should make a bossa nova album. because that doesn't really have anything with James Bond to do. It would be more useful to play a phrase that sounds like Dr. No looks surprised. If you want to get better at connecting the phrases in your solo and sound more like one long story when you're playing, then you need to develop skills like motivic development and core response phrasing. I cover how to work on these, how to get these into your playing, and how to practice these things in this video. So if you want to improve that aspect of your improvisation, then check out this video.